What if I told you that the world's first global economy wasn't built on gold, or silver, or even oil, but on something so small, so ordinary, that you probably have it in your kitchen right now? A handful of black peppercorns once held more power than entire kingdoms. A few grams of cinnamon could shift the balance of empires. And a secret network, invisible to most textbooks and forgotten by modern history, controlled it all with silent precision. This network manipulated supply, created myths to hide their sources, triggered wars without fighting them, and shaped the world map. All while most of the world had no idea it was happening. Today, we're going to uncover what this network was, how it rose to power, how it collapsed, and why the same pattern is quietly repeating itself in our modern economy right now. But first, we need to go back to a time when a spice was worth a fortune, and a rumor could change the fate of continents. Visuals of ancient markets, Indian Ocean ports, Arab dhows, scrolls, papyrus records. Before the world was connected by fiber optics and trade agreements, it was connected by something far more fragile: desire. Desire for flavor, for wealth, for status, for power. Spices weren't just ingredients. They were medicine, perfume, religious offerings, preservatives, and above all, symbols of class. Pepper could save meat from rotting. Cinnamon was believed to cure the deadliest diseases. Cloves were thought to protect their trade secrets. Early merchants created elaborate legends. Cinnamon, they said, came from nests guarded by giant birds. Cassia grew in valleys protected by venomous snakes. Cloves came from islands so dangerous that no outsider could survive the journey. These stories weren't folklore. They were barriers to entry. A primitive, brilliant form of economic misinformation. And it worked. For centuries, no outsider even knew where these spices originated. This secrecy allowed the network to expand quietly, steadily, until the Arabs stepped in and transformed it into something far larger. Visuals of ancient dhows slicing through monsoon waves. By the 7th century, Arab merchants became the undisputed masters of the spice world. Their power came from a simple but extraordinary advantage. They understood the monsoon winds. Every 6 months, the winds reversed direction. Ride them one way, and you reached India. Ride them back, and you reached Arabia or East Africa. No European sailor understood this. Most didn't even know these wind patterns existed. This knowledge allowed Arab sailors to establish a predictable, efficient maritime supply chain. Spices traveled from India to Aden, then to the Red Sea, then overland to Alexandria, and finally into Europe. Arab merchants stayed quiet, kept the routes secret, and marked up the prices. They offered just enough supply to keep Europe hungry, but not enough to let anyone break free of the system. Global shipping lanes, and even the algorithms that run the modern internet. 90% of the world's advanced chips come from one company in Taiwan. China controls over 70% of rare earth processing. 3 shipping alliances handle over 80% of global container traffic. Once again, a small group controls a commodity the world depends on. Once again, nations are scrambling to bypass the networks. And once again, conflict is brewing on the edges of supply chains. The spice story isn't ancient history. It's a blueprint. So what can we learn from the secret network that once controlled the world's richest commodity? Scarcity creates power. Whoever controls a rare resource, pepper, lithium, data, shapes the global economy. Information is the real currency. For centuries, knowing the monsoon winds was more valuable than gold. Today, knowing algorithms and supply chains matters just as much. Every monopoly eventually breaks, but never quietly. When one group controls too much for too long, the world reacts often violently. The next major global conflict may not be fought over land or ideology, but over who controls the resources powering the digital age. Just like spices once shaped empires, today's hidden networks may be shaping our future. If you want to keep exploring the hidden forces that shaped and are still shaping our world, make sure to subscribe. Your support helps us uncover more stories that challenge assumptions and reveal the truth behind global power. Thanks for watching, and stay curious. But here's where the story becomes interesting. These spices only grew in extremely specific isolated regions, pepper on the Malabar coast, cloves in the Moluccas, cinnamon in Ceylon. This geographical isolation created a perfect environment for monopoly, and from this monopoly emerged a sophisticated, multi-layered network of traders, financiers, sailors, and middlemen. Yet this wasn't a public system. There were no published trade records, no maps, no open auctions. The network thrived on secrecy, on misdirection, and on keeping outsiders away. And at its heart were the people who knew something others didn't. The direction of the monsoon winds, the location of the spice groves, and the truth about their origins. But to understand how this all grew into the world's first global supply chain, we need to start at the beginning. Our story begins on the Malabar coast of India, more than 2,500 years ago. This region produced black pepper, the king of spices, the one that would eventually dominate Europe's markets. Local communities grew the pepper, but they didn't sell it anywhere. They didn't need to. Arab, Jewish, Tamil, and Chinese merchants arrived by sea, forming the earliest layers of the network. They didn't publish their routes or reveal where the pepper came from. Instead, they built a closed system of information. Only those inside the network knew the harvest cycles, pricing trends, and weather patterns. Soon, another layer emerged, myth-making. Shots of Dutch East India Company fleets, fortresses, burning trees. In the 1600s, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, became the most powerful corporation on earth. They didn't just trade spices, they militarized them. The Dutch seized Indonesia's spice islands, forced local populations into exclusive contracts, and burned spice trees on competing islands to keep prices high. This wasn't a network anymore. It was a monopoly enforced by cannons. The VOC controlled production, routes, prices, everything. For 200 years, they turned spices into the world's most profitable commodity. But the brutality of the system, combined with global competition, eventually caused it to collapse. The monopoly broke, trees were smuggled to other regions, and spice prices plummeted. What began as a secret network ended as a global scramble. And here's the part nobody expects. This isn't just history. The same pattern is repeating right now. The spice network was built on geographic scarcity, secret routes controlled information, exclusive access, and massive markups today. Similar networks exist around rare earth minerals, lithium for batteries, semiconductor manufacturing. Spice wasn't just a commodity, it was controlled information, and information is power. But this control created tension. Europe, at the end of the chain and paying the highest prices, was growing desperate. And desperation leads to bold decisions. By the 1400s, Europe's demand for spices was exploding. Pepper was on every noble's table. Cinnamon was used in medicine, embalming, and feasts. Clove and nutmeg became status symbols. But Europe had a problem. They were totally dependent on the secret network. To get 1 kilogram of pepper from India, it often passed through 6 to 8 middlemen, each raising the price. By the time it reached Venice or Genoa, the markup could exceed 3,000%. This sparked a radical question among European monarchs. What if we just skip the middlemen and go straight to the source? This single question launched Columbus' westward voyage, Vasco da Gama's journey around Africa, Magellan's circumnavigation. The dawn of European imperialism, the spice trade didn't just inspire exploration, it justified colonization. Europe was no longer trying to join the network. They were trying to replace it. And one European power would do it with terrifying efficiency.